Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll give it just another moment to let the students come in from the waiting room. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Human Genetics and Genetic Counseling Profession and Program Overview webinar. My name is Janet Doan. I'm the Admissions Outreach Coordinator here at Keck Graduate Institute, and I'm very excited to have Dr. Emily Quinn, the Program Director for our Human Genetics and Genetic Counseling Program and Assistant Professor presenting for us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat, or towards we will also have a question and answer section where you'll be able to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you may have. We look forward to having you here today. And Dr. Quinn, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. So glad to have you joining us today. As Janet mentioned, my name's Emily. I am the Program Director for the KGI Genetic Counseling Program. And what I have for you are a few slides, just giving you a little bit of a taste of what our program is. I think most of you are probably here because you're familiar with genetic counseling, but I will give just a slight overview there. And then we will transition into questions and answers, because I feel like I'm happy, I can talk about the program for a full hour, but really so much more of I think the meaningfulness of these virtual information sessions come from me being able to answer your questions. And I do have two second-year students who will be joining me to also answer any questions you have, so that you can hear it not just from me, but from two individuals who are actually going through the program. So with that, I am going to start with just reviewing a little bit about, genetic counseling. So we are healthcare educators who have training. Any genetic counseling training program you have is going to give you that foundational background in molecular genetics, as well as counseling theory and methodology. How do you actually explain really complex medical and scientific concepts to someone who doesn't have that same background? And genetic counselors exist in a variety of different areas of practice. The traditional clinical roles where you will see genetic counselors have been in the prenatal and preconception arena. So these are people that are pregnant, planning to become pregnant. Pediatrics, so children who may have differences in their developmental skills or may look a little different than their family members, may have multiple congenital anomalies or things that make you suspicious of an underlying genetic condition. Cancer and cancer predisposition has been a very large specialty. So cancer can happen to anyone at any time. However, there are people with cancer predisposition syndromes running in their family, where these families have way more cancer or a certain cancer type that happens more common than we would expect. And then general adult genetics, and this can include, some of the emerging subspecialties, which I'll talk about next. Also, I mentioned pediatrics, right? These kids grow up and become adults and still need care. So some of the kind of expanding areas of subspecialty we see, and much of this includes general adult genetics, are cardiology, neurology, psychiatry. And then I mentioned, our clinical roles, but really genetic and I think that frequently is what many people think about first when they think about genetic counseling. But non-clinical roles are actually, we have more and more genetic counselors working in these types of positions. So one of the big ones being industry, or working in laboratories, doing work in business marketing and product development, medical science liaisons, variant interpretation, as well as research. And so a lot of these positions happen in industry. Research, you can see that also happening within academic centers. So here is the program overview that you can see on our website. And we believe that, that we distinguish ourselves as a program because we emphasize interprofessional professional collaboration, problem solving, and personalized patient care. The program is dedicated to benefiting society through the education, training, and development of innovative, culturally engaged, articulate, and caring genetic counselors who will serve the needs of the individual patients, the healthcare system, as well as the bioscience industry. So let's talk about our curriculum. So we have, over the course of the 2 years, students will take 69 credits, or I said 2 years, it's really 21 months. And 31 of these credits, so just under half, are really rigorous didactic coursework. So these are classes. So these are credits where you're actually in the classroom, learning different pieces of information. We have 26 credits that encompass our clinical fieldwork placements, and then another 12 credits that are encompassed by our capstone project. So year one of our program is very, very, very course heavy. So if you talk with any of our first year students right now, they are just in the throes of a whole series of classes. And the reason why we really front load the didactic curriculum in year one is we want students to have as much exposure as possible to that information before they go out on the rotations. So we have some second years who are going to be joining us who I know will, think back on their first years. It is a lot of work, but frequently what I hear from students in their second year is, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I got that out of the way. And actually, wow, I'm seeing the direct application of this information in my rotations. So rotations are a big part of year two, as well as doing independent work on the capstone projects. So the different areas of our program that I'll discuss is we have our courses and course credits that encompass our genetic and genomic principles courses. So this is ensuring that all students have a strong understanding of the underlying science of the genetic conditions and the disease mechanisms that they're talking about. We have our genetics and healthcare courses, and this is how clinical genetics exists within a variety of healthcare specialties. So how does genetics exist within cancer, within biomedical or biochemical or metabolic genetics and general genetics? Genetic counseling in practice. These courses are how to communicate complex genetics concepts in each of these healthcare settings. So, and much of those courses are the ones that I teach. So our fundamental genetic counseling 1 and genetic counseling 2 courses. We have professional development courses. This is where students work on their public speaking skills. Also, the second year of the program, students are enrolled in a course to help aid them in their independent boards preparation, because all students from any program do sit and take board exams after graduation. And that's how you become a certified genetic counselor and can then get licensure in the respective states that you are in. We have our capstone project, and I have another slide to address that. And then, of course, field work, which I think is one of the most enriching pieces of the program. And I've got some slides to talk more about field work. So here is just a snapshot of what year one looks like in our program. And as you can see here, it is very didactic heavy. And we have these courses. At the very bottom, you'll see that there is 1 credit in fall and spring for fieldwork observation. So most of the time spent in year one is in the classroom, but we do have this opportunity for students in year one to go in and do some shadowing and observation in both a prenatal reproductive as well as in a cancer clinic. And students generally get 2 days in clinic exposure per semester, but also in these fieldwork observation courses, we have students listening to podcasts that are clinically relevant and having discussions based on those. We have series of guest lectures come and speak about different specialties. So I had mentioned, the specialty of psychiatric genetics, for example. Well, there aren't dedicated psychiatric genetic counseling rotations in Southern California at this time. It's an emerging specialty. I do believe we are going to continue moving in a direction where we will see more and more genetic counselors integrated into all healthcare specialties. But at this time, we're not there. But we know so many students are interested in psychiatric genetics. And even if they can't get a formal rotation in it, we want them to be knowledgeable about the field and the specialties. So we have guest lecturers come in who specialize in each of these areas to just help augment and supplement that information, that educational exposure. Year 2 of the program. So the summer between year 1 and year 2 is when students start their fieldwork rotations. And the first rotation ranges anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the center. And this is where students are working full-time in their rotation. So it's 40 hours a week. And it frequently does feel like having a full-time job where you really just dive in and get that exposure. And then students also take a little bit of time for summer. I mean, for vacation during the summer too, because again, year 1 is quite an undertaking with the coursework. And then in year 2 of the program, we see that the courses are quite light. Students meet once every 3 weeks for their psychosocial and professional development courses. They meet once a week for their, or almost every week for their boards review course, where they independently are refreshing themselves and relearning as needed different content areas that are going to be relevant for their board exam that they take after graduation. We also have students that we have both our first and second year students come every week for an hour to do a joint case conference and journal club, where our second year students present case conference, so discussing cases that they've seen while on rotations, and then we pair our first and second year students up together to do one journal club presentation over the course of the year. Students are also getting credit for independent work on the capstone project, and in year 1, we have a series, research methodology series course to help students in preparing and brainstorming ideas and kind of thinking through the logistics of carrying out a capstone project. And then in year 2 of the program, students are actually working on their capstones. And then the fieldwork experience continues, and we have students doing 2 additional rotations, each spanning about 7 weeks in the fall, and then another 2 rotations, each spanning about 7 weeks in the spring semester. So just to summarize all of that together, I've said it now many times, year 1 of the program, really heavily didactic. And regarding location, it is in all of our students do come to Claremont for the first year of the program. All of our courses are in person at KGI. And then year 2 of the program, that's where we see variation. So there are 2 different tracks that students can match into at KGI. One is our Southern California-based track, and that's where we have the majority of our slots. And this means when you match to KGI, we will find you different rotation opportunities within our Southern California area. And for many students, that's exactly what they want. They want to come. They know they're going to be in the Claremont area, roughly in Southern California, for all 2 years of the program. The first year on campus taking classes, the second year doing their rotations. For others, they say, you know what, I am fine coming to Claremont for the first year, but I'm actually really interested in getting exposure to different rotation sites outside of Southern California as well during year 2 of the program. And those students we direct and say, you know what, you may be more interested in our flexible or our travel track, which is the second column on our little box on the right there. And the flexible track we have, I will talk about some of the affiliation agreements with sites outside of Southern California. This includes Northern California as well as some other states. And I have a slide that summarizes that. So when people come and interview for our program, some may say, I want to come to KGI, but I know
audio is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that any better? No? Huh.
Your audio sounds fine to me. It's hers that's being all crackly.
Oh, okay. So Janet, I don't know if you can hear me. It might be your internet connection, not mine, but thank you for letting me know. There's nothing worse than just talking into the abyss and no one can hear you. So if it's okay, I'll continue. So for some students, they may say, I want to come to KGI, but really I only want to come if I know I'm going to be in Southern California 2 years. Others, they may say, I'm interested in KGI, but I really don't want to be in Southern California the second year. So I'm really attracted to the travel track, and they may only rank 1. Others may say, okay, I want to come to KGI and this is my preference. So, and we never know what you rank. So, so all of those are options. And we moved this year, for the first time, we moved our second year of the program to be entirely virtual. And the reason for that is last year, we discovered that it was the first year we had students on our flexible travel track, and it just wasn't feasible if our students were in Hawaii to come back once every 3 weeks for this in-person didactic education. So we had some students on campus, some students virtual, and that hybrid model really just didn't work. So the decision was made this year, you know what, since we have more students this year on the travel track, let's just have the entire second year of the program be remote. And for many students, it's been an attractive feature, even if they are in Southern California, because some students relocate elsewhere into Los Angeles to be closer to other rotation sites, and it saves them that drive in to Claremont. For any of you unfamiliar with Southern California, it's vast and you need a car to get around and there's traffic. So, so that is also just something to keep in mind. Year 1 of the program in person in Claremont, but year 2 is entirely virtual. So let's talk about some of our fieldwork opportunities. Here's just a little screenshot of some of the places that our students rotate through. We do have strong industry connections at KGI, so you'll see Fulgent Genetics, Quest Diagnostics, our color are some of the places, are some of the industry connections that we have students rotate with. We have a number of really reputable clinical sites throughout Southern California, Children's Hospital Los Angeles, as well as Children's Hospital Orange County, City of Hope, Cedars-Sinai. Many of our students rotate through the vast number of Kaiser Permanente centers throughout Southern California. And when I say Southern California is vast, it really, really is. So here is just a little screenshot of where all of these centers are located throughout Southern California. So most of them do cluster around the Los Angeles area, but we do have reach into San Bernardino County, Riverside County, as well as Orange County, kind of all within, I would say, regular driving commute distance in Southern California. But you'll also see, if you look all the way up, we have a rotation site in Santa Barbara, and all the way down a rotation site in San Diego. And the Santa Barbara site to date, since COVID, has been virtual. It's unclear if that's going to remain a virtual rotation, but it may be that students relocate to Santa Barbara for 7 weeks or 8 weeks during their summer rotation. And then San Diego, that rotation has been in person. So just also something to note, I think the beauty of our program is you get exposure to a lot of different types of genetic counseling at a lot of different types of centers. But the other piece of it is that year 2 of the program, you are doing a good amount of time traveling and commuting with your rotation sites. So for those interested in our travel track, here are some of the places we have affiliation agreements. We've had students who have been at three of these locations, students in Las Vegas, students in New Mexico, as well as students that have rotated in the San Francisco area, as well as Sacramento up in Northern California. No one yet has taken us up on the opportunity to rotate in Anchorage, Alaska, where there is one genetic counselor there. And then one of the sites that our students who are on the travel track really enjoyed last year was they got to go to Hawaii for their second semester and rotate in the centers there. And I know that they both had a really positive experience there. So if you match into the Southern California track, it's not to say that these opportunities wouldn't perhaps be extended to you, but those students on the travel track do get priority, if you will, to those rotations. Right, so let's talk about Capstone. This is a 2-year project that is really largely student-led. The timeline, we have students in year 1 of the program coming up with topics of interest, doing literature reviews to just better shore up their understanding of their concept, beginning to put together a capstone committee. So who are some experts in the areas in the area that you're interested in doing a project on, who can guide you through the process. We have a great overview of methodology. How do you actually want to carry out your research? What are the appropriate methods? And then ultimately the goal for students at the end of year 1 of the program is, if you are engaging in human subjects research, to submit to the Institutional Review Board, or IRB, for this governing body to give you the green light to go forward and carry out your research. Then in kind of starting the summer, as well as into year 2 of the program, students are actually implementing their research projects. They're collecting data, they're analyzing the data, and then they're ultimately writing up their results. So the end goal on KGI's end, students are required to put together a capstone manuscript, as well as to present a poster and actually I should update these, because really it's been, we originally were doing posters, and then we've moved it to be oral, or an oral platform of presenting slides, so that, and having it be virtual, so that different members of the capstone committee can come and join, because it can be challenging for capstone committee members to actually come to Claremont for the physical poster presentation. So we're actually continuing to do the oral presentations, but we still have students put together a poster. And the reason why is because there's strong encouragement to also submit your abstract to present your research findings at a conference. And in Southern California, every year we have a Southern California Genetic Counselor Conference. Nationally, there's the National Society of Genetic Counselors Conference, and we usually have second-year students or recent graduates present their capstone projects at those. And much of the time, the platform is posters. So that's why we have you prepare the poster over here so that it's ready to go. But also some students have been selected to present their findings, their capstone findings, in an oral PowerPoint presentation format at these conferences, which has been really, really exciting. And so what are our students doing? Some of the topics include doing projects relevant to cultural engagement, inclusion and equity, access to genetic counseling services, pharmacogenomics. So we are embedded within a school of pharmacy and health sciences, and we've had students in the past who have engaged our pharmacy faculty in their capstone projects and have leveraged those opportunities. We had one student who did a really great project last year on genetic counseling admissions, which I can imagine for many of you prospective students is of interest. What does that process look like? And then one of the things that we moved to a couple of years ago, we originally, when the program was designed, we had students do an original research, a traditional thesis project. And traditional thesis projects, you're doing original research, and the manuscripts that you produce are quite lengthy. And we realized, we are a larger program, and we have not all students come in really wanting to do original research projects. And so we shifted from a thesis to a capstone requirement. And while many students still choose to do original research projects, others have said, you know what, that's not really me. And we've been able to support them in doing different things with their capstone projects. So last year we had 3 students who wrote up interesting cases or case series with sites that they had rotated with. And it still is engaging in scholarly activity. It was a really win-win for the site, who just needed some extra bandwidth to actually write up these interesting cases, and good for the student to get that exposure in and what it's like to write up a case study and then get published at the end. We also have had students doing educational projects. So they aren't necessarily original research projects, but still they are implementing tools that genetic counseling clinicians can use in practice. And so it's been really, really neat to see the different areas that students have been going now that we've expanded to the capstone project. All right, who should apply? So we are interested in students who are very excited to combine a passion for science with direct patient care, to be on the forefront of personalized genomic medicine, to interface with genetic testing laboratories in the biotech industry. Again, KGI, we are a place with really strong industry connections, and we value that, to work in a rapidly evolving field, and then to engage in the field as lifelong learners. We always say that the education that we're providing you, we don't want to just train you for the jobs you're going to take today, but we want to give you the skills and the tools that you can apply for the jobs that are going to exist 10 years from now. I had mentioned that there are emerging subspecialties that I think will only continue to grow. And so can we provide you with that background where you can even be perhaps the one to spearhead and be one of the leaders, really making a name for genetic counseling within that specialty, as well as going into other areas, be it industry or research or public health or even education, right? I am a genetic counselor, and my job is to be a program director. There's a whole different track, there if you're interested in education, and we want to give you that foundation there. So what makes our program stand out? What's our difference? So we are one of the 7 Claremont colleges, which means that we have access to, even though we are a small institute at KGI, we are a small institute within a larger consortium with the resources that come from that. Should that be student health services, our library services, things of that nature. We believe that we are really unique given our location in very diverse Southern California, with just a wide array of clinical opportunities as well as industry opportunities. We do things a little different at KGI with our didactic coursework, where we utilize, much of our courses are in this flipped approach, which is students, instead of sitting in class and having someone lecture at them and taking notes, many of our instructors pre-record their lectures, make those available to students prior to coming, so that you can engage with the material at a pace that works best for you. I can remember when I was in grad school, there were often times of, and I missed it, and I wish I could have just hit the pause button and rewound to rehear it instead of interrupting, this large lecture hall. As well as if there's a concept that just maybe you need a little bit more of a refresher on it, that you can hit pause, do a little bit of independent research, and then come back and re-engage with the lecture. And so I think that, and then given that when students come to class, it's much more activity and discussion based, because the thought is that you've already had that initial attempt at, just really learning the material independently at a pace that works for you, then when you come to class, you can better optimize the instructor in the room to ask the questions that you have, but then to really apply the information through discussions and activities to really just enrich that learning experience. So I think those students who know that they are good at independently keeping on track of their, work and will watch those pre-recorded videos, I think are a really good fit for our program. I've seen some students who, perhaps to keep them accountable, they really need to just know, okay, I'm going to class at this time and I'm going to get this lecture. And then, maybe another program is going to be a better fit for you if you know that you need that level of accountability, because we do heavily rely on students taking advantage of the materials before coming to class. So I'm talking a lot about our program, the MSGC program, but we do have a sister program, which is the Master of Science in Human Genetics and Genomic Data Analytics program. And these students take the same core genetics courses with the GC students. So so human molecular genetics, clinical genomics, all of those genetics in practice courses, such as medical genetics, biochemical genetics, clinical cancer genomics, all of that curriculum is taken with both the MSGC and MSGDA students. But while our students are taking courses that are more relevant to genetic counseling and and just the theories and methodology behind being an effective counselor, the MSGDA students are diving deeper into variant analysis, bioinformatics, and programming. So I think that there can be really great room for collaboration between the GC and the GDA students. You're all going to be future colleagues with each other. Many of the MSGDA students end up taking jobs in industry and the laboratories if you are a clinician that you order from. So those connections can start early. But I feel like the MSGC and the MSGDA students always bring different perspectives into the classroom, which is really valuable. Most of the courses that students take in our program are taught by genetic counselors, which I think is an incredible asset because you are learning this information from someone who is actually doing a job that may resemble very closely to the job that you are doing. So, and most of our course instructors are adjuncts and actively practicing. And so you have that high level of relevance too. It's not just someone who perhaps was a clinician 10 years prior, they are still actively a clinician and are more on top of just the emerging changes that are happening in the field. We do have 2 scholarships that are available for students who come to our program. One is a diversity scholarship that is actually a separate match track that students can match into to match in and know that you have some money that is associated with your match. And then for all students who don't get and it's just one diversity match track, for all of the remaining students who don't match on the diversity track, they are eligible to, after being matched, to submit a cultural engagement scholarship where it's an essay, and we select one student from that pool also to receive some money to help fund their education. And then the final thing that, that I feel like has our program stand out is we still are a relatively new and developing program. So we just graduated our 3rd cohort in 2022. And while we've been doing things for some time now and have worked out some of the bumps and kinks along the road, there still is a lot that we are continuing to change. As I mentioned, we just moved the entire 2nd year of the program to be virtual and remote. And I think that what we're looking for in students who match into our program are those who are really excited to be part of implementing these changes in our program. So we a lot of our decision to move the second year of the program virtual was based on student feedback that we got last year, as well as our own observations. And I think for many of our alumni, they really take a lot of pride at, being an alumni of KGI, because they look and see what we're doing with the program and they see how they invested and helped contribute to some of those changes. So the last slide I have before we go into Q&A is any of you who are not planning to apply and match this cycle, you are encouraged to join us virtually this summer. We have a clinical genetics and bioinformatics summer program, and it is co-taught by myself and the program director of the MSGDA program, Dr. Barbara Fortini. And in this, it's a 1 week, all virtual, very intensive course where you just get exposure to a little bit of everything in both genetic counseling as well as into the laboratory side of genomic data analysis. So there's a link there for anyone who is interested in applying. Many of the students who either match into our program or go into GDA went through the CGB course and really had positive things to say about it. So that is my contact information, my desk line, as well as my email. I can also put it in the chat, and then I can go ahead and stop sharing screen and field questions. Okay, do students on the travel track switch rotation locations frequently? Great question. So last year was the first year we did the travel track, and we had one student who was in New Mexico for both of her fall rotations, and then was in Hawaii for both of her spring rotations. So she moved from Southern California to New Mexico to Hawaii. So there were, so that was a total of 3 moves there. The other student was in a different place every rotation. So I think I'm trying to remember where she started. I think she started in Southern California, then she went to Las Vegas, and then she did a remote rotation, and then she went to Hawaii, and then she went back up to the Bay Area, which is where she was from. And my understanding for both of them was that was a good fit for what both of them were interested in doing. So I think that we are very open to getting student feedback about where they want to be placed and how much they want to move or not move, but sometimes just due to the limits of what rotation sites we have available, sometimes we can honor all of the requests, and sometimes we can, but it may not, but other times we may be a little bit, have our hands tied a little bit more about where we end up placing a student. Really great question. Yes. So can you please share why KGI does not accept letters of recommendations, but prefers the question and answer format? Okay. So I'm the chair of the admissions committee, and this was actually one of the decisions that I was involved in. And what we were doing previously is, so at KGI, when you submit your application, it goes to 3 reviewers to review your personal statement. And at the time, it was letters of recommendation. And we, as the admissions committee members, are scoring your statement of purpose. And we were also scoring your letters of recommendation. And there was a lot of variability, if you will, in how people were scoring. How do you determine if someone says, I enthusiastically recommend this person, and just writes a little bit, but they still say that, that you were really great? How do you actually say, is that a really super stellar letter of recommendation or less so? And we felt like, let's take some of this scoring off of the hands of the admissions committee, which is more open to bias, and put it back to the scoring system for the recommender, where when they are selecting the range of of your aptitude in each of those skills. When we're scoring the aptitude in each of those skills, it's the recommender. Each of those things are tied to a number that then gets assigned to you. So we just felt like it minimized our room for bias. And Savannah, you've had your hand raised.
Hi, so I just wanted to clarify, are the local rotations and the travel track, are those separate on the match ranking, or is it after? Okay.
Separate, exactly. So you have that ability if you know, I'm interested in KGI, but I really don't think the travel track and moving around is going to work for me. You don't have to rank that track. You can just rank the Southern California track. Or if you know you want to come to KGI and you'd be open to either, you can rank both. Some may say, okay, I want to rank KGI and SoCal, and then maybe I want to rank some of the other SoCal-based programs because I really want to be in Southern California, and then lower on their ranking list, they may say. But if I can't get in anywhere that's guaranteed Southern California, then I'm open to going to KGI's travel track.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And also, I just wanted to welcome Claire and McKenna, who are both here. And I see, thank you both for putting in your name signatures. They are second year GC students that are actually working with me on a program leadership rotation, getting a little bit of a peek behind the scenes about what it's like to run a genetic counseling program. Okay, how many applicants do you get each year? So last year we got 140 applications, or maybe it was like 142. And that's been, I think that was pretty consistent with around what we got the year before. And we interviewed half. So we interviewed 70 people last year. And that is the plan this year again, to interview about 70 people. And then the plan for matching this year is to match another cohort of 20 students. And with 15 of those slots are Southern California based match track. One of the slots is that diversity match track. And then the other 4 will be the flexible travel track.
Great, thank you for all the questions. Are there any other questions? Maybe for the students as well, if you want to ask them about their experiences, what they like the most. Maybe Claire, you can answer a little bit more about what you like the most about the program.
Well, I may just jump in and of course, Claire, feel free to talk about what you like about the program, but I can imagine, Claire McKenna, so you remember what it was like when you were a prospective student and you were deciding, okay, what do I do with my application? What's the interview process like? Learning all of that. How do I go about deciding what questions, to even be asking, right? What are some of the things that you wish, that you could tell your previous self when you were an applicant that would be helpful?
That's a really interesting question. I think mostly for me, I had a ton of anxiety about the match process, and also just like getting interviews and getting those rejections back is really difficult. And I think that in some ways I kind of let it consume me in my life. And so I think my overall advice would be just to try your best to stay calm. I think it's definitely difficult, especially as you come up towards that match day. I know that day I woke up like at 4 a.m. and was like refreshing my email like every 2 minutes. And so I think like really if genetic counseling, if you've decided that this is for you, it's important to, maybe make peace with like, no matter what happens this cycle, I will be a genetic counselor eventually, and that will absolutely make your experience more positive and less worrisome, because I know this is definitely a difficult process to go through.
I think something that I wish I would have known. Also, I love that advice, McKenna, about like application anxiety that is very, very real, and like reminder to take care of yourself. I think something that I wish I would have known was that genetic counselors in general are just very open and helpful people, and that you can really use that to your advantage. We're very comfortable like responding to emails, talking, like reach out and it'll be okay. And I think that I was very afraid to do that, just because I kind of had in my mind placed genetic counselors, genetic counseling students, program staff on some sort of inaccessible pedestal. And that is absolutely not the case. It's a very small profession. Everybody is, our, what's that called? Colleagues. And even between like current students and genetic counselors, that communication is like the lines are not heavy. If you just kind of get that confidence within yourself to reach out for help or to ask for shadowing experiences, that is absolutely something that I wish I had done, that I just didn't feel, I guess, confident enough to.
Another thing that I always tell prospective students that I just didn't think to ask about. So, and I tried to capture it, but be looking at, okay, what is the size of the program? And I think that some students, a large program is a really, really good fit. And, Claire and McKenna, I know that you just have wonderful classmates, and that I think there can be a lot of great things that come with a large cohort. Others may, prefer a smaller cohort for other, for whatever reason. Where are the rotation sites? So is this a smaller, is this a program where it may be smaller and all of the rotations are embedded within the medical center of the program that you're attending, which there's a reason why I mentioned commute time and stuff. We're a program with external rotations. We're not embedded within a medical center. So you are traveling. And for some, they may just say, you know what, I just want to go to this one place, and I know that I'm going to have all my rotations there, and I can live in the surrounding area. And that works great. That was the type of program I ended up going to. What it also meant is that I knew how genetic counseling worked at one center. I had great recommendations and resources from one center. And I think that many students at KGI really benefit from that ability to see how genetic counseling works throughout a variety of different specialties and centers, but it does come at the expense of driving around. I think the other thing that I just never would have thought to ask is who are teaching the courses. And some programs, this is something I'm really proud of at KGI, that we do have a lot of faculty who are practicing genetic counselors who are teaching you the courses. So it's really directly applicable to the jobs that you have. Other places may have other individuals who are teaching the courses, and that direct line to how is this applicable to the work that I'm going to be doing isn't always as obvious. With that though, there is the piece that our adjuncts also have other commitments, right? They have other full-time jobs. And so it's just a balance. And I don't think there's one model that's better than the other. It's all just comes down to fit and what's going to be the best fit for you.
I have something that I just remembered, Emily, that I would like to add is one decision I really struggled with is there are some programs that you start clinical rotations very early on, like in the first couple of months. And then there are other programs like KGI where you do all of your coursework essentially in the first year, and the second year is essentially all rotations. That's huge. I think, different people have different preferences based on their learning style. I really enjoy the structure at KGI, but when I was applying, it was definitely something that I wasn't sure that I would enjoy as much. So that's something to definitely ask about and pay attention to.
I see that there are some questions that trickled in. So are there any current students who took a gap year before applying to KGI or other genetic counseling programs? Yes. most of the students in our program took 1 or more years off. We do accept people who are coming straight through undergrad. McKenna, were you straight from undergrad? That's what I thought. So we've got one here, but I think McKenna in her class is one of 2 who was in that camp. And some students like McKenna are super ready, but a lot really benefit from taking some time, working, making money before you take on graduate school expenses that can really just create that other just asset to you, and just having some more life experience when you apply that I think can be really valuable. And I don't know, McKenna or Claire, if you want to expand anything about just your decision, Claire, to take some time, or your decision, McKenna, to go straight through.
Yeah, I think I took about 3 years before entering GC school. And honestly, part of that time was me like doing some personal development and like figuring out, really, is genetic counseling something that I want to do? And then waiting to apply until I was sure that the answer was yes. In the meantime, I was working in healthcare, and I think that my experience doing that for 3 years really helps with like patient interaction and experience with both patients and doctors. And I'm really, at the end of the day, I'm glad that I had that opportunity to kind of learn more about like healthcare and insurance and things like that, and also to develop some sort of savings to help get me through grad school. But there are lots of different ways to finance a graduate degree. So I like looking back, that I know that there are many different paths I could have taken, and there are many paths that you could take.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I knew I wanted to be a genetic counselor for a very long time. And I just got, I was very lucky. I went to UC Irvine for my undergrad. And as you all probably know, there's a genetic counseling program there. And so I worked very closely with that program. And I just, sort of knew that this was what I wanted to do. And yeah, I mean, I think I was just ready to like kind of get things started in my life as far as a career. And that's why I made the choice that I did. But I think that gap years, from what I've heard from my my fellow students, is that it was really beneficial for them. Like some people started families, some people had a career change, other people took time off to travel and do all these fun things. So I think that, both options are fantastic. It just depends on your preference as a person.
Then I see another question. If we get accepted into the travel track but change our mind, are we allowed to stay local in SoCal for the second year? So in theory, yes, that is something where we do have a number of rotation sites here, but part of the reason why we designed the travel track was that being a larger program, and there are other programs in Southern California who also use the same rotation sites, we realized we can't always necessarily place all 20 students in Southern California at a given time. And that was also part of the motivation of let's create affiliations outside of Southern California where we can send students and just design it as a separate track for people who are interested in doing that. So if you're on the travel track and you decide, I'd rather stay in SoCal, we can do what we can to try and keep you there, but there may just be, we need to send someone to New Mexico and it's you. So that is something to just keep in the back of your mind. And then there was a private question I got about if we get into the program, would we be able to take the USMLE, which is relevant for medical school? And I'm really glad this question came through because this is a program, if you are any student who matches into the program really should be committed to, yes, I want to be a genetic counselor and work as a genetic counselor. We need more physicians with genetics expertise and experience. And if medical school is of interest to you, I highly recommend you consider the MSGDA program, which gives you that same exposure to genetics that our GC students are getting, but also gives you more information about just variant interpretation and things of that nature. That's really the better program before medical school than us. And on the program end of matching, does KGI have one rank list that they create regardless of track? Yes. So we have one rank list for that we submit for all of the tracks, SoCal and travel together, and then a separate rank list for the diversity track. And the reason why is that the diversity track is designed to help fund the education of someone whose racial, ethnic, gender background is not well represented within genetic counseling. So for any of you who aren't familiar with our field, it is predominantly white women. That is a category, that is a demographic I fit into, and we need to change that in our field. So anyone who's not a white female is welcome to match into our diversity track. But when you're filling out your application, there's information about racial identity and gender identity, and that information we utilize for who we rank for the diversity track. So really great question. And Janet, I'm so sorry. You had asked that great question about what they liked the program. And I said, let's table it, just because I just know what it's like to be a prospective student. And like, sometimes you don't know the types of questions asked, but your question was so good. I want to go back to it for Claire and McKenna to just share a little bit about what you have liked about being a student at KGI.
I mean, there are just so many things that I enjoy. And so it would be difficult to capture all of that in just like a couple minute spiel. But I want to touch on something that I was surprised that I enjoyed, which is having the cohort size of 20. I think when I was debating my rank list, I was like, I love everything about KGI. The only thing I don't think I would do well in is this environment with so many students, just because I'm a little more like quiet. And so I really thought I would fit better into a program that has like a cohort of 5. But actually, I think that the cohort of 20 has been like one of my favorite things about KGI. Truly, there's no competition between any of us. And it sounds very like cliche, but we're all like truly very close friends. And that's something I didn't expect at all.
Yeah, I feel pretty confidently that I can speak for pretty much all 20 of us that our favorite thing about the program is our cohort, like our classmates, and just like developing relationships with them and having like the most wonderful support system. And I know that almost every single classmate of mine would say the same thing. So trying to think if there's, something else that I guess I just love about this program is how receptive to student input and student feedback they are. If things come up, they get implemented so fast. I don't even know how Emily does it. But it truly matters your experience in the program and how things are hitting you. And if there's things that aren't working or things that don't seem relevant, just having the opportunity, like so many opportunities to voice that and then have the program respond and adapt very quickly is fantastic.
I see this last question. I know we're getting to time, but curious about the research project. Can we choose the topic for genomic informative project? So the capstone projects are completely up to the students, what area you want to select. So as long as it can be connected in some way relevant to genetic counseling, you've got the green light. And yes, I think that different, genomics projects are I mean, that's really just where the field is going, right? It's where it's been for a little while and it's where it's continuing to go. I think that those are great topics. Okay, and I have another private question. If we take the Master's of Science in Community Medicine, is it considered medical school? And will we then be able to apply to the USMLE and for residency after? So, and I know Janet's on here from our admissions and outreach team. So the Master's of Science in Community Medicine is something that I know that some students who are interested in going to medical school have applied for and are currently doing. So I'm gonna just kind of punt that one over to Janet because that's separate from our program for any further questions there.
Yeah, so I sent the link with the curriculum for the Master's of Science in Community Medicine, but if you have any specific questions regarding that, I also added the admissions email as well, and we can connect you with the admissions counselor that oversees the community medicine program, as well as the genetic counseling program if you have any questions.
As the first year courses, do we take it as a cohort as 20 students or take it with medical students? Will that be a group or teamwork during the first and second year? So we don't have a medical school at KGI. So sometimes there's confusion because there's the Keck School of Medicine and we're Keck Graduate Institute, totally separate institutions in totally separate locations. Keck School of Medicine is in Los Angeles and we're in Claremont, California. But just to answer the question of if you are a genetic counseling student in our program, you take courses most of the co-courses are with the MSGDA program. There are some courses that are just the MSGC program, our program, and then there are a few courses in the first year that you take with other graduate students in other programs.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for all the wonderful questions. Thank you so much, Clara McKenna, for being on here today and answering the questions that we had. If anybody else has any other questions, I put the admissions email in the chat. Again, you can connect with our genetic counseling admissions counselor who can answer any specific questions you may have or any questions about summer if you're interested in doing our summer program. Thank you, Dr. Quinn, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you, everyone, and I wish you the best of luck with your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.